Although I enjoy watching almost every genre of film, the deep love and passion I have for the horror genre is unmatched. Ever since I can remember, I have been captivated by horror movies. I've always found a fascination with the dark and grotesque. When I was young, I would spend my days sometimes at my grandmother's house as she would babysit me while my mom was at work. My uncle, who still lived there at the time, was into horror. He used to show me all kinds of movies. So much so, I'm sure there are some that I don't even remember. However, I do have a vivid memory of watching the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 all by myself and turning it off after the opening scene on the bridge. Everything with Leatherface being on the back of the pickup, the two guys screaming as the chainsaw tore through their car, and No One Lives Forever by Oingo Boingo playing in the background. It all freaked me out when I was barely 5 years old. I'll never forget discovering Jason Voorhees and watching through the Paramount-released Friday the 13th films. Jason quickly became my favorite horror movie character, and to this day, it has never changed. My uncle was also subscribed to Fangoria Magazine at the time. In the land before the internet, Fangoria was a horror publication that would break news on upcoming horror releases, show behind-the-scenes photos, and have interviews with stars and filmmakers. There were many magazines like this back in the day, but Fangoria was the one he subscribed to, and he had a huge stack of them in his bedroom. And as you could probably guess, I would look through those magazines with delight. I was like a kid in a candy store. I guess a candy store that was owned and operated by Pinhead. Even when my uncle wasn't home, I would sneak into his bedroom to look through those magazines. It was there, flipping through those pages, that I first got an intimate glimpse into not only the world of filmmaking, but horror filmmaking. I remember seeing with my young eyes photos detailing the makeup process that transformed Robert Englund into the iconic Freddy Krueger, or some of the men behind the mask of Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers. I believe this is where my fascination with horror really blossomed into something more than just a love for the movies, but a love for the craft of horror filmmaking and the magic of the special effects that are designed to terrify the audience. I knew everything I was watching was faked in some way to look real on screen. Throughout the years, I would always try to guess how something was accomplished in my head, trying to see through the magic tricks I was viewing and understanding how it was all achieved. My uncle was also into special effects and such, as he also owned a few props and masks as well, one of which was a Michael Myers mask. I remember he would walk into the basement where I would usually spend my time playing and watching movies and just stand there, dressed as the Shape, not moving, not talking. He would scare the crap out of me. I also remember him coming up to the back deck and standing at the sliding glass door by the kitchen, scaring my grandmother half to death once she noticed him. It was some fun times. Growing up with separated parents, I have the fondest memories of going to the local video store when I was spending the weekend with my father. We sometimes went to Blockbuster, but our video store of choice was this place called West Coast Video. I would always run straight to the horror section and attempt to pick something out. However, my father wouldn't just let me rent every movie I grabbed off the shelf, but it was still fun to see all the VHS tapes sitting there on the wall. I absolutely loved being able to physically hold the movie in my hand gaze at the front cover art and the photos on the back of the box, and fantasize about what the movie would be about and all the scary stuff it would feature. For a lack of a better term, this was a magical experience, in my opinion. Sadly, this is something that new generations of children will never be able to experience. But I am grateful that my father took me and gave me that experience. He and I watched a lot of random horror movies in those days. I also have this vivid memory of my father taking one of my older brothers and I to see Scream in the theaters when it came out. I would have been around 11 at the time of its release in 1996, but I still remember when that Scream title appeared on screen. It was so loud. When the movie was over, I remembered my father saying, "That Drew Barrymore didn't last very long." No, Dad, she didn't. My mother used to let me stay up late, much later than my proposed bedtime, just so I could watch new episodes of Tales from the Crypt as they premiered on HBO. My favorite episode to this day was the episode titled Carrion Death, which is from season 3 and premiered in 1991, making me around 5 years old at the time of its airing. The episode is about a killer on the run and with a bag full of money after robbing a bank. He thinks he's home free but runs into a determined motorcycle cop. He eventually ends up handcuffed to the police officer, but when the police officer ends up dying, he's stuck trying to figure out how to get the handcuffs off. Oh, and all of this is taking place in the middle of a desert. If you haven't seen the episode, I highly recommend it. Watching the episode years later and realizing the main character was played by Kyle MacLachlan was crazy to discover. One of the reasons this is my favorite episode is not only because I enjoy it, but also because it's the one episode my mother still remembers to this day. She will say, "I'm not dead, I'm not dead," and then talks about the man whose eyes were pecked out. One day in 1993, I remember sitting on the floor in my mother's bedroom playing with some toys of mine and watching something on the television. What happened next, I remember very clearly. A commercial for Jason Goes to Hell came on the television. I lost my mind. I remember seeing the hockey-masked killer and easily knowing that it was Jason. The voice on the TV saying,
"Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday."
After it finished, I ran to my mom saying, "They're making another Jason movie. We have to see it." Not something a typical 8-year-old asks their parent, but needless to say, my mom took me to see it in the theater when it was released. By now, you could probably tell that I was not like most kids growing up. While most kids were watching movies that were aimed at children, I was busy rewatching Halloween 2 for the millionth time. I'm surprised I didn't break the VHS tape we had recorded it on. Remember my uncle? Well, in 2003, he took me to my first ever horror convention. I didn't know that that one day was going to set me down a new path in my horror journey. The first horror celebrity I ever met was Gunnar Hansen, the actor who portrayed the original Leatherface in the 1974 classic, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I was nervous and I did not talk to him for very long. It was strange to meet him after seeing the movie so many times, but he was very nice and definitely made my first celebrity meeting experience a wonderful one. From that first time in 2003 until now, I could not even tell you how many conventions I have attended. My love of horror was high before, but after regularly going to conventions, my love for the genre grew exponentially. I have had the pleasure of meeting so many of my favorite actors and actresses that it has pushed my love of horror to new heights. I also had the pleasure of meeting all the actors that have played my favorite slasher, Jason Voorhees. Not only do I have an 8x10 photo for each individual Jason, but I also have a hockey mask that has all of their signatures on it. If you'd like to see more about that mask, there are links in the description below for videos on it. I am grateful that I've been able to meet the people that have been a part of my life and childhood. Some of them are no longer with us, but their legacy will live on through the films they helped create for lovers of the horror genre. So, why do I love horror? People ask me this from time to time, usually in a really snarky, uptight way.
Why do you like horror movies?
This is usually after I just told them that I don't like watching sports or something similar. To be honest, I have never really actually sat and thought about it until I wrote this. To me, it's undoubtedly all of the family-connected memories I have with horror while growing up. I believe they slowly molded me into the fan of horror that I am today. What started as a simple taboo has matured into a passion, one that still arguably grows as each new day passes. I also just love the art behind it all. Sure, it might be dark and it might be bloody at times, but there is a real sense of beauty behind it all. You can't convince me that the Crypt Keeper's mansion from Tales from the Crypt isn't a thing of beauty. I believe it was my fascination with finding beauty in the grotesque that first drew me into the world of mask collecting. Whether it's a mask based on something from a movie or just something creepy, it doesn't matter. I've always been captivated by the haunting beauty that lingers in the faces of certain masks. Lastly, I've been to a lot of conventions over the years, and the fans in the horror community have always been such nice people. An outsider of the genre would think,
all those people getting together over gory movies, they all must be sick weirdos.
On the contrary, although we all might be bonding over movies that have killing and such involved, it doesn't make us weirdos. I have met some non-horror fans that were passionate about other things that are close-minded, hypocritical, and just genuine assholes. If you are a horror fan and haven't attended a convention, go seek one out. You'll love it. Horror gets a bad rap. People think differently of you just because you're a fan. Well, say what you want about the horror genre, but it's my genre, and I love everything about it. I hope you enjoyed this video and hearing my story, but I want to hear your story. Leave a comment and tell me why you love horror. Let's keep things positive and have fun sharing our love for the genre. Oh, and P.S. Remember those Fangoria magazines I told you about that my uncle had? Well, he found them in a box in my grandmother's attic and gave them all to me. If you're interested, which I know you are, there's a link in the description for a video all about it. Before you go, though, would you kindly subscribe? Until next time.